So, Pascal, I know you got some questions.
Yeah, since
Pascal's got enough questions to keep us on until after midnight. Your time, right? Not our time. Your time after midnight.
So, I just want people watching to know that for the most part, Pascal comes up with the questions, because at this point, this is all gone right now, and I don't have questions on the level that Pascal has questions.
Yeah, no, they're good and important questions. So I look forward to our discussion.
So Pascal, he called me up earlier this morning to yell at me that he had these questions and did I read them while I'm trying to fix my computer and get the show ready. Then he called me up again to yell at me if I read them. So I want y'all to know that are watching, share this shit out in your social media, because Pascal spent a lot of time trying to come up with the perfect questions for our guest today, brother Adolph Reed Jr.
Well, one of the reasons I did that is that people are so used to calling me a Reedian that would have thought I would have been just standing and a fan for everything that gets out of your mouth. But that's instead of doing that,
the idea that there's something called a Reedian out there that people can toss around.
Somebody on the show called us. They said, called us Reedian.
You're too Reedian.
Really? Wow.
Yes. I don't know what the fuck that means, but I was like, all right.
I don't either.
All right. I was like, all right. I mean, I don't really know. All right.
Am I some kind of Vulcan or something?
We got to get a special handshake or some shit.
Yeah, right.
But Adolph, I mean, I've been reading your stuff. We've been communicating back and forth via email, and I've been reading your stuff long enough to know that you got a lot of haters. And without a question, and contrary to what the haters would have believed, I'm going to ask you questions in here to challenge you, the core beliefs, and have you lay down the marker so they can hear how you, put up or shut up. And that's why I asked the questions that I did. So we're just going to take it from the beginning.
Okay.
All right. So, Adolph, one of the focus of your early academic work was in analyzing how, at the height of the 60s moment, the power elite in America were so able to start what we here at This is Revolution call the 50-year counter-revolution, meaning the period from the rise of Nixon to today and the reactionary counter to the 60s.
Right.
In one of your essays called The Black Revolution and the Reconstitution of Domination, you discuss how simply blaming the attacks of the state through COINTELPRO and other oppressions are not enough to explain why the Black radicals were unable to effectively make an imprint in actual politics. You discuss how Black radicalism was reconstituted into ruling class. Can you elaborate on how Black radicalism post-60 was reconstituted into the prerogatives of the ruling class? And do you see the current manifestation of racial grievance politics from Black Lives Matter to reparations discourse suffering the same fate?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say a couple things. I think that what happened in the wake of Black Power, right, was, in retrospect, at least, a predictable phenomenon, right? And frankly, I mean, both Cedric Johnson and Preston Smith have helped me see and articulate this this dynamic in a more textured way. Because Black Power was always two things, right? It was an expressive or a performative radical politics, right? And it was a de facto ideology for consolidation of a new Black political class that took shape over the 60s. I mean, really beginning, depending on where you were, like in the late or the mid to late 50s, and began to consolidate institutionally after passage of the Voting Rights Act. And it's so funny that so many people who want to talk about the black radical tradition or whatever, as they see it now, treat the Voting Rights Act like it was just a thing that happened. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't a very significant, institutional development, like in American political life, but certainly in Black American political life. So what happened basically was this new class of, professional and managerial types who were able to respond to the expanded opportunity structures that opened after the landmark legislation of the mid 60s, which, by the way, included people like me, right, were naturally came to form communities of interest, right, in the political realm that grew more tightly bonded over time, right? And what happened was, since so much of Black Power radicalism was performative, didn't have an institutional agenda, didn't really have a practical program that was possible to organize around, it just kind of fell by the wayside, right? And it fell by the wayside. Yes, COINTELPRO had something to do with it. Yes, Ford and other foundation funding had something to do with it. But the real story was a natural transition, into a class-based ethnic politics on a model that was dominant in post-war American political life in most parts of the country, and especially like in the realm of urban politics. So in that sense, it's not. And so this is why, as much as I liked and agreed with Bruce Dixon and also Glenn Ford, that's why I don't think that the misleadership class construct is particularly helpful, because the misleadership notion presumes that the Black political class has a mission to which it's more or less committed of advancing the interests of Black Americans across the board. And that kind of misses the point. Like, they've got their own interests that they're advancing, and what they do, as classes typically do, is define their interests as isomorphic with the interests of the population in whose name they purport to be speaking. So I hope I didn't run away from the question.
No, but my larger question is that, do you see this manifesting itself with the current racial grievance discourse politics?
Oh, yeah. Right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll say this. I mean, we got to remember, I'll just answer the question that just popped up on the screen. Yes, I am, and it doesn't matter. But but the thing to keep in mind about this transition is that it's accretive, right? I mean, it's not like point B is entirely separate from point A. So I think a way to think about it is, the new Black political class consolidated itself over the 70s, say, to be charitable, right? And the ways of thinking about Black American political life and about race and politics that we all have inherited or are accustomed to, right, over the last 30 years are rooted in the common sense that was formed out of that moment of consolidation in the 70s. So I'm saying that to say that the forms of expressive politics like Occupy and Black Lives Matter and the reparations stuff took shape in a context, in a hegemonic understanding of what Black struggle is, right? I mean, for instance, that were already dominated and defined by the Black political class. So there never was any question really as to whether those radical expressions, right, were connected with the substantive politics and program, or a genuinely transformative political vision that people could try to organize around. So no, I wasn't surprised that they turned out the way they turned out. And like, you don't have to be smart in particular to have seen the absence of an organic foundation for those political expressions, which is the reason I never would that I resisted calling them movements, right? Because they weren't. I mean, they were actions, right?
To hear the rest of the show and more, you can find us at This Is Revolution Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Podbean, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Also, you can find a new episode every Wednesday on the Zero Books YouTube channel. This is Revolution.